$387. Free links. Bought over 2 days in July. One of them still does not exist. Purpose. These are mine. I still have the invoices. The first was a guest post on a tools blog. $70. One-time payment. Do follow. And it went live and stayed live. The second was a listing on a scraping tool site. $150 for a 6-month term. The third was another guest post. This one placed through an agency onto an IP lookup site, and it came to $167.11 after a discount and an add-on fee. 70 plus 150 plus 167. $387.11. Further, the site I pointed them at. Now the part that matters more than the links. The site I was pointing all of this at had 40 pages indexed, 0 ranking keywords, and 1 click from Google search in the previous 180 days. 1 click in 6 months, across 40 pages that Google had already crawled and filed away. So the ceiling was not authority. The ceiling was that nothing on the site answered a question anyone was typing into a search box. So before we go any further, understand that I was buying authority for a site that had not yet earned a single position worth strengthening. I knew that when I bought them. I did it anyway, partly to test the vendors, and partly because I wanted the placements banked before the content caught up. Whether that was smart is genuinely arguable, and I will come back to it. The 150 that vanished. Let us start with the failure, because it is the most useful one. The $150 listing was paid on the 12th of July. 8 days later, it still was not live. I had an invoice, I had a confirmation email, and I had nothing on the page. The vendor had said they would email when it went up. The email never came, so 39% of the entire spend was sitting in someone else's account with no asset attached to it. Not lost exactly, just parked somewhere I could not point a link from, for an amount of time nobody would commit to. When I did chase it, the reply was friendly and vague, which is its own kind of answer. And here is the thing. Calling it a scam would be wrong. It was a small team with a queue, and my order sat in that queue behind other people's orders. Boring, ordinary operational slippage. That failure mode is far more common than outright fraud, and nobody warns you about it precisely because it is boring. So the first practical lesson is unglamorous. Put a date in your calendar for every placement you pay for. Set it about 10 days out and chase on that date. If you do not track it, nobody else will. The pricing was not a single number either. Worth pausing on how that third invoice actually assembled itself, because agency link pricing is never the figure on the page. The list price was $157.90. There was a 10% discount applied, $15.79 off. Then 3 days later, an add-on fee of $25 to get it onto the specific site I wanted rather than whatever was in rotation. So the advertised price was $158, and the amount that left my account was $167.11. About 6% over the sticker, which is small, but it arrived as a separate charge on a separate invoice 3 days later. If you are budgeting a campaign across 20 placements, that gap stops being a rounding error. Ask what the site selection fee is before you order. It is almost never in the headline price. What verified actually has to mean, when the other two went live, I did not take the vendor's word for it either. Verified live has to mean you personally opened the page and looked at the link tag. The check takes about 30 seconds. Find your link in the page source and read the rel attribute on it. If it says no follow or sponsored, you bought an advert, not a link, and there is nothing wrong with that as long as it is what you agreed to pay for. On both of mine, the rel attribute carried only no opener, which is a security attribute and passes nothing on, so both were genuinely followable. I checked the anchor text at the same time because that is the other thing that quietly drifts. The spam scores, and the one that surprised me, I vetted all three before paying, using backlink data rather than gut feel. The numbers came back like this. The $70 site had 569 referring domains and a spam score of 16%. The $167 site had 7,800 referring domains, 677,000 backlinks, and a spam score of 26%. And the $150 listing, the one that never appeared, had 938 referring domains and a spam score of 44%. SERP score 44%. That was by a wide margin the dirtiest link profile of the free, and it was also the one that felt the most legitimate going in. Real company, real product, real audience, a site you would have recognized. The spam score does not care about any of that. It looks at who is linking to them, and a lot of who was linking to them was junk. I still bought it. I decided the audience relevance was worth it, and I would probably make that call again. But I made it knowingly, with the number in front of me, and that is the entire point of vetting. Treat vetting as pricing information rather than as a gate. The score does not tell you to walk away. It tells you what you are actually buying, so that when the placement underperforms, you already know why and you paid accordingly. On relevance, briefly, the two that shipped were on sites where a mobile proxy link makes topical sense. One covers automation tooling, the other covers IP lookups and network topics. A reader on either page could plausibly want what I sell. I mention it because relevance is the one factor that survives every algorithm update anyone has ever written about. And it is also the factor most link vendors will quietly ignore if you let them. Their inventory is their inventory. They will place you wherever there is a slot this week unless you name the constraint. So name it in the order and be willing to wait for the right site rather than take the available one. The position I will defend. Here is where I will lose some of you. Domain rank, domain authority, whatever your tool calls its 0 to 100 score, is close to useless as a buying signal on its own. Look at my free ranks of 307, 210, and 464. Now line those up against the outcomes. The best ranked number belonged to the listing that never went live and carried a 44% spam score. The worst ranked number belonged to the placement that shipped clean do follow with the anchor I asked for on a site with nearly 8,000 referring domains. The score told me nothing useful. Referring domain count, spam percentage, and whether the page is actually about my topic told me everything. Sellers lead with the authority score precisely because it is the number that is easiest to inflate and hardest to argue with. Anchor text. And what actually shipped? I asked for a commercial anchor on the agency placement and got exactly that. 2 words, pointing at the home page. That is not always how it goes. The more common outcome when you buy through an agency is that the writer drops your link on your brand name or on something bland like click here, and you find out after publication when it is awkward to ask for a change. So specify the anchor in writing, in the order, before anyone writes anything. And accept that if the agency does the writing, you are getting whatever their writer produces around it. The renewal trap. One more thing on the listing. It was sold as a 6-month term with automatic renewal. That is the standard shape for directory and listing placements, and it is where the money quietly leaks. 6 months later, you get billed again for something you have possibly forgotten you own. I had the renewal cancelled and, more importantly, I got it in writing before the money was spent. An email that says we have paused the renewal so you will not be charged automatically. Keep that email. Every available assurance from a support chat is worth nothing in 6 months when a different person is handling the account. What I cannot tell you? Now the honest part, and it is the part most articles like this skip entirely. I cannot tell you what these links did to my rankings. It has been about 3 weeks. Anyone who shows you a ranking chart 3 weeks after a link purchase and draws a causal arrow between them is selling you something. Link effects, where they exist at all, take months and get tangled up with every other change you made in the meantime. I cannot show you a traffic graph either because the analytics project behind that site was deleted in an unrelated platform mess and the reporting has been broken since. So even the observational data I should have is not there. I'm telling you that because leaving it out would make this article look more rigorous than it is. For links cannot fix. So was it a good spend? Probably premature, and I will say that plainly. A site with zero ranking keywords does not have a link problem. It has a nothing to rank problem. Links make an existing position stronger. They do not conjure a position out of 40 fin pages that nobody searches for. Spending $387 on authority before there was anything to point that authority at was solving the wrong constraint first, which is a mistake I have watched other people make and made anyway. What I would do with the same money now. If you handed me the same $387 today, I would spend it on content that targets things people actually search for, get pages ranking somewhere on the second or third page, and then buy links pointed at those specific pages. Links applied to a page that is already ranking 11th do something you can measure. Links applied to a page ranking nowhere do nothing you can see, and I would still buy them. I am not going to pretend otherwise, and this site sells placements too, so you know exactly where I stand. Just in that order, and after the content, not before it. The full vetting checklist I use before paying anyone is up at theseodesk.com. Subscribe for SEO that has actually been tested.